Okay. Hello, everybody. I think we can start with our session. So I welcome everybody to the session, the next session on getting ready for the EOSC Federation, perspective of different stakeholders, part 2. So this is now the sister session of the first session we heard. We will have quite some interesting presenters from different types of research infrastructure, e-infrastructure, service providers, and I would like also to speakers perhaps already having the seat. Oh, you want to? Yeah, thank you very much. Again, thank you for coming. So it's quite full, the session. I hope we have also our virtual session with us. So as you hear that this session is a sister session. We might have similar questions, but I think there will be quite interesting discussion and also different approaches. And and the session is a bit framed like a learning exercise, so that you get a bit inspiration how different types of organization, which could be interpreted as a federation or node type, actually already function. So that's a bit the purpose of the session, and yes, inspiration. Perhaps also inspiration for, let's say, communities, other ERICs who are not as organized, that they get some inspiration. The format, I think, will follow as the format we had also from the other sessions. So we have a little bit short pitch of our presenters. Then we will have a panel discussion. I will take some questions from the audience and also from the virtual audience. And Sarah, if I manage to do Slido, I will also take the sessions from Slido. Otherwise, I will look at you and ask to take some questions from the floor. Before I give the floor to the first speaker, I also take the opportunity to present myself. I'm Bonnie Wolf-Böhnisch. I'm the director of CESTA. CESTA stands for the Consortium of European Social Science Data Archives. We are one of the very few ERICs in the field of social science and humanities. I'm also currently the chair of SHOC, which is the science cluster of the SSH, and we are one of the 5 science clusters which encompass all the 28 ERICs. As you see, it's an important group of infrastructure to be in the debate, also in shaping EOSC. We have 22 member states and 12 partner countries, and we have a little hub. And as such, we could be interpreted already as a node because we are distributed virtual. But there's still a lot of challenges with the whole discussion, and I'm also happy to learn from you how you organize yourselves. With that, the first speaker is Jan Korbel. He is the head of data science at the European Molecular Biology Laboratory, EMBL. Jan has had a leading role in the Thousands Genome Project, and as a steering committee member has co-led the pan-cancer analysis of the Whole Genomes Project. He has leadership roles in the Human Genome Structure Variation Consortium and the German GAGA project linked to EOSC. He has been active in EOSC Pilot, leading the pan-cancer use case, and is involved in EOSC for Cancer. He is also a member of the EOSC Health Data Task Force. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. So my pitch is for EMBO. So I'm the head of data science, as was said in this kind of introduction at EMBO. And the European Molecular Biology Laboratory is the European international organization in molecular biology and the life sciences. Actually, a unique organization in the life science because we had 6 sites. So we're naturally not a national organization, but we are federated. And we've been lucky to have been able to make substantial contributions to the life sciences in terms of our research, but also in terms of services and infrastructures we provide. For example, in structural biology, we have 2 sites at major synchrotrons that promote structure determination. We also have an imaging center at one of our sites that promotes imaging technology development. And we have probably the largest sites in life science data at EMBL EBI. That's a site that hosts our data archives, which per day have on average 100 million web requests being used from the community throughout the globe and informing research, obviously. We also, as an organization, have had key roles in participating in the development of federated infrastructures across Europe as free infrastructures. To name Elixir, for example, also by Eurobioimaging. And that's what we are happy to bring to the table with respect to EOSC. We've also been part and contributing to EOSC from the beginning. That was mentioned already from the pilot studies until now, and look forward to contribute and help shape EOSC in the future.
Thank you very much, Jan. The next speaker would be Natalie Haley, right? Haley? Yeah. She's an integral part of Instruct ERIC, the European Research Infrastructure for Structured Biology, since 2017. You are the head of strategy, and you were helping to grow and develop Instruct on the European and global stage. You were involved in projects such as Corbel, EOSC Live, and REVIS. So you work a lot towards data management and in EOSC, and you were also a member of the Financial Sustainability Task Force of EOSC Association, developing the proposal for the financial sustainability of the EOSC core component. And yes, with that you have a strong knowledge in data management strategies. So the floor is yours.
Hi, so I'm representing Instruct, which is the European Research Infrastructure for Structural Biology. It's a bit of a mouthful. And as Jan just introduced, EMBL is one of our members, so we are an ERIC. You might have heard a lot about ERICs, and Bonnie introduced her ERIC. But what is an ERIC? An ERIC is a European Research Infrastructure Consortium. It's a particular type of legal form that some of our infrastructures have taken. Instruct's been operational for longer than it's been an ERIC. So before we were an ERIC, we were a UK-based limited company. We've been operational for 13 years now, offering access. And what does that mean in structural biology? So we follow the whole research process of a project, from protein production to biophysical characterization to 3D structural analysis. And this is offered in a distributed way. So the hub is based in Oxford in the United Kingdom, but we have nodes. This is a different kind of node. This is a node of our infrastructure. In fact, we call them centers in Instruct, but in other infrastructures you hear them called nodes. And that's of our 17 members, we have centers in 10 of them. So every member eventually will have a center, but the centers are purveyors of excellent research, so they go through an evaluation process. So it's not automatic that every member has a center. It is an independently reviewed process. So we've been there, we've built a distributed organization, and we're happy to share these experiences with EOSC. On the data side, alongside the experimental techniques, we've got great expertise in processing and handling these data and making them available. Structural biology was actually one of the pioneering sciences in first collecting all of the data, structural data, and also making it mandatory for this data to be made available before publications would be accepted in journals. And that was a community-driven effort, and the result of that has culminated in the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, you might have heard a couple of weeks ago, was given to the development of AlphaFold, and also EMBL's been heavily involved in this as well. So we've been there, we've seen what 30 years of putting openly accessible data in a database can do, and we want to expand that to other types of data because there's so much more to be discovered.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Katrin Stöver from Géant. I think a lot of people know Katrin already. So Katrin has 27 years of experience working in the European and global research and education network community. She's an active player in European Géant projects. Her international profile includes the building of Géant-like structures in other continents. And over the past 5 years, she led Géant through the changing landscape of emerging new policies and resulting activities. From 2019 to 2020, Katrin was part of the EOSC Executive Board and led the establishment of the EOSC Association. In 2020, she was a founding director of the EOSC Association and chaired the EOSC Association First General Assembly in 2020. You're also a member of the Scientific Council, which is the Wissenschaftlicher Rat of the NFDI, the German National Research Data Infrastructure. Please, Katrin.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you for having me. Yesterday we heard a lot about the Draghi report and how Europe needs to be more competitive, and in order to be more competitive we need to collaborate more. And I fully agree to that, and I just want to point out that actually Europe collaborates quite a bit already. And I think Jeand and our community of European NRENs, we've been collaborating for over 30 years in the provision of secure connectivity across the European continent and also globally with our 120 partners globally. And that is bottom-up, long-term European collaboration. And I think that is collaboration at its best. And just to make a point here, because I'm representing a little bit the e-infrastructures here as well, it's not just JEAN that has been in existence for so long, it's the other e-infrastructures as well, who have been around for more than 20 years. And I think this long-term commitment that we have shown to collaboration in Europe is something that actually needs to be recognized. But in addition to the underlying infrastructure, the secure connectivity that JEAN and the community of NRENs delivers, we, of course, also run two extremely successful federations globally. One is EduRoam, and you will all probably even have an EduRoam account, I hope so. But you will have heard about EduRoam. Open your laptop and you are online, whether here in Berlin at the Technical University, or you go as far away as the Lusaka airport and you will have EduRoam. EduRoam runs in over 100 countries, and in 2023, we had globally 7.5 billion authentications. That is a scale that federations need to achieve, and that is something that I would like to talk about later when we talk about challenges. In addition, we have EduGain. It was mentioned earlier as well in the launch of the EOSC EU node. EduGain reaches over 80 federations globally, and that means we have over 8,000 service and identity providers in there, and altogether we give access, and somebody said also in the opening, access is the gold towards data. So we give access via EduGain to about 27 million students and researchers globally. Again, that is a measurable success, and that is something that we need to build on. We, of course, in JEAN, over the last 30 years, we have an enormous amount of lessons learned when it comes to federations, but I think that's a point for a later question.
Okay. Thank you very much, Katrin. Well, quite impressive data, you presented. I would then introduce you the next speaker, which is from a different type of service provider. It's from LIBER. So Martine Pronk is the Executive Director of LIBER Europe, the Association of European Research Libraries. She's responsible for the coordination and implementation of the LIBER strategic actions. And beside Martine works at LIBER, she's also a member of the steering committee of the Open Science NL, so it's funded or organized by the Dutch Research Council. And before that, you held the position as the head of academic service and member of the senior management team at the Utrecht University Library in the Netherlands. Yes, you had different responsibilities, notably in research data support services in the university, which I will probably be very interesting to hear about. And you call it the open access track of the Utrecht Open Science Program. And yes, you represent the university in the EOS Association. The floor is yours, Martine.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you for having me in this panel. Like you said, LIBER, the European Association of Research Libraries, with more than 400 members in 40 countries, we are the largest network of research libraries. And first, moving to libraries itself, libraries work as a kind of federation. And being here may be a little bit a strange duck in the pond, but this may be an interesting example where for centuries libraries have the core task of making knowledge and information available and accessible for use and reuse. And they've done so by connecting local collections and building an underlying framework of rules, regulations, standards, so that more and more, it doesn't matter where you are, you can get what you need from wherever it is. And that's an interesting experience that I think the EOSC is also trying to achieve already now and for the coming years.
Okay, alles, everything safe.
With this introduction. I think what research libraries have to can provide to EOSC is that they are deeply embedded in research performing organizations, and they work at the crossroads of infrastructures and research. And that gives us a different, we do not work with the data itself, but we provide the services, the support, and the experience and knowledge that is needed for researchers to be supported and being able to work with EOSC in this kind. And as for LIBER, what we do is provide a network that connects knowledge and expertise across Europe. And that is by connecting people, we can bridge what is happening now in EOSC towards the future where everyone not being included in EOSC can be connected as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the institutional component is also very important to discuss in this context. Last but not least, we have another, not Martin, but Martino Romagnello from the European Southern Observatory. Martino, you are an astronomer at the ESO headquarters in Garching by Munich in Germany. And you are the head of the back-end operation department, and you are in charge of the management of the science data from its La Silla Paranal Observatory. And this includes the scientific operation development of the ESO Science Archive, the generation of science data products for distribution through it, collection and verification, and archiving archival data products from the community, as well as the scientific oversight of the processing of ESO data. Very interesting. The floor is yours.
Thanks. So European Southern Observatory is astronomy we're talking about. We have 16 member states from Europe. Our host state is in Chile because the skies, what we look at, of course, is outside of our atmosphere, so we need very clear skies, and Germany is not the best. For that, let's say, our headquarters are in Munich, but our observatories are in Chile, where skies are perfect. So we have these 16 member states that pay the bill at the end of the day. Then we have a host state in Chile, as I said, and Australia as a strategic partner. So we know a thing or two about federating different entities towards a common goal. So one of the things about astronomy is that for whatever reason, we have a long tradition of sharing data. So we at ESO have been around for 60 years, probably the second oldest intergovernmental organization after CERN in Europe. And we have this long tradition of sharing data, of open data and access to data beyond the people who pay the bill, because it's been 20 plus years that our archives are open to the world. And in fact, the biggest users of our archives are Americans. That's just because they are the bigger community worldwide. If you make the data open, this is what happens, which is a good thing because we get a lot of science out of that. So that's, I think, it's an interesting aspect of astronomy. And of course, since we've been doing for a long time this data sharing, we by now have a system that works to share the data. And it's called Virtual Observatory. It started with a lot of European funding in the 2000s, more or less. And now we have a mature system. So one of the interesting questions is, I think, how you incorporate an existing system that works in a discipline into a bigger one with a bigger ambition, and this bigger ambition should not tramp the existing things that work. So this is one of the interesting things. For one of the projects that we are carrying out, we have a distributed set of nodes throughout Europe, so that's another thing maybe we can contribute to this. And last thing I want to mention is that we're building a landmark S3 that's called the ELT, the Extremely Large Telescope, which will be the biggest ground-based telescope in the optical and near infrared. It's going to be 39 meters in diameter, so much bigger than this room, just to give a set of scale, and will be operational in 2 years from now. And for a long time, it will be the only one in the world. So that's another interesting point of view. What do you do when your data is unique? And how do you make this uniqueness available to everyone?
Thank you very much, Martino. With that, I would already, start the panel discussion, and I will kick it off with general question. My feeling, or what we all from you, what is common is that you are quite old. There are quite old networks, you know, federated a common goal. So would you have some advice, or what you think could be a crucial factor for the success of your federation? So whoever wants to answer the question, please. Go ahead. Yeah.
Happy to have a go to start off with. Although Instruct is quite old, we're 13 years old, a lot of the organisations that made us up are far older than we are and far more well known than we are, I hesitate to admit. So, for example, Diamond Light Source, the UK's national synchrotron, EMBL facilities, these have all existed a lot longer than Instruct itself. And when we're putting together the infrastructure, we needed to make sure that we respected, and I think this also feeds into Martino's point in his introduction, we need to make the most of what has already been developed and what already exists, not trample all over it, but genuinely add value. So how can an infrastructure that is new to the scene take those lessons on board? We've also got a lot of different national contexts, and our motto is we've got to be flexible. We've got to listen to our centres, what they need, and then try and add some orchestration on top that's genuinely useful to the users. So the user comes into a single point, sees the infrastructure as one, and we try and act as similarly as possible, but respecting underneath the operational side of the heterogeneity, and try and hide that complexity from the users, because the users don't want to know about the internal politics and national things that are going on. They just want to get their science done, and that's our job here, hiding that complexity, and also making sure that we aren't wasting resources on unnecessary bureaucracy, because this is perceived by the scientific community very negatively when they see organisations coming up and saying we need a governance system. Obviously these things are necessary, but if they see that as where the money is going, that can be reputationally quite poor.
Thank you. Somebody wants to add? Please.
Yeah, I can add to that. I think whenever we do something in the GÉANT environment, there's two things that are absolutely vital for something to happen. One is a sense of purpose, and out of that purpose, you need champions. I mean, I'm very glad that Jan just mentioned Elixir, because Elixir has been one of those champions for us in the environment of AAI infrastructures. Elixir really wanted tailor-made AAI to work together in the life sciences community, and that started for us a completely new model, and looking at you know, what's the next step from EduGain towards, you know, specific user groups using the EduGain for the access of the user group. So I would say you need purpose, you need a champion. And once you come to it, and I mentioned the 7.5 billion authentications of EduRoam, you need scalability. And scalability, from my point of view, really means that you have to focus on interoperability. And that again, and I'm full of the ET words here, for us is the principle of subsidiarity. You need to only control and manage what you really need to control and manage. The rest needs to be bottom up. It needs to work with, you know, the institutional, the national models. You need interoperability and scalability, and for that you have to be flexible and you have to allow a level of independence. And an example here is for us the EduGain. EduGain has a self-asserted compliance model. It's self-asserted. We never say you get a stamp, boom, and you're EduGain. No, you self-assert that you stick to the code of conduct of EduGain, and we only trigger the code of conduct when we have serious concerns that you're not doing that. But most people do. Most people want to be self-compliant. So I think these are very important elements to us. As little as possible top-down, just enough to be interoperable. Just don't mess with university policies or their business models, because if you want to scale, you cannot change the world. You need to incorporate what's coming from bottom up.
Okay, thank you. We want to add, please.
adding some perspectives of EMBL to what was said already. So EMBL indeed is a fairly old organization. We turned 50 this year, and so we've done federation for many years. We've also done open science for many years. So we were actually in the 80s, which was, I was still in kindergarten at that time, already putting up DNA sequences to the community, and they were used at that time already, and that emerged into what now is known as the EBI databases and resources that are used across the world. So we have we've kind of been a big proponent of open science through the years, but there's still important lessons learned because we within the federations that we are part of, and even within our organization, which has 6 sites, we need to constantly address the issue of open science again through open communication channels and governance frameworks that are fit to the purpose to achieve wide open data sharing. And I'm now wearing the head of EMBL's head of data science, where we're actively promoting within the organization data sharing across our 6 organizations and also to our outside partners. And while we're doing this, we're always keeping in mind the unique strengths of individual partners while we are working towards a common goal. So it's a mix of good governance frameworks and communication channels to achieve interoperability of data and willingness to share open data, and to bring our frameworks to a state where we can realize data sharing in a federated manner.
Martin, you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. To add to that, I think what really resonates to me is to keep the individual strengths of all the components. Also to address diversity and in culture, in local flavors that you have, but also institutional differences. So that's a very important thing. And then have, like you're saying, the underlying framework that makes interoperability possible. And another thing that I would like to add is that technique is not solving everything. So a federation is people work, and it needs also a structure across individual components that connect together, who know each other, and that needs to be fostered as well. And it needs work on top of the technique that will provide a lot of things, but not everything.
Yeah. So yeah, actually what strikes me is basically what you said, that keeping the individual strength, right, of the party, that's really bringing the sum is greater, no, the component together is bigger than the sum. But how should I say, you said also insinuated governance on communication. So I'm wondering if in the bottom-up discussion, how you do.
Can I just one thing on,
yes,
on
yeah,
the
please,
previous one?
yeah,
Sorry.
please.
I agree on and share all the experiences I think that were expressed here. Just one thing, in the case of ESO, and it's probably true in general, but let's see. One of the key components to our success is very stable funding. And so with the structure that ESO has to join ESO, and then not being able to leave ESO essentially under any normal circumstances, allows for very stable funding. There was one of the keys to build very ambitious projects. Now, I'm not exactly sure how that will translate in the EOSC, and because you want people to be able to join the EOSC much easier than it is probably an organization like this. But again, funding, I think, not only the amount, is the stability, knowing what you can count on in the foreseeable future. That's what allows to then build the projects.
Okay, thank you. Well, I will then re-ask my question. In such a federation, bottom-up, I mean, of course, there needs some decision-making, there's a governance, but how do you, or if you can, tell how you make decisions or even decide towards innovation, right? When it's time to a bit having tailor-made no products. I mean, it's, of course, the feedback from the users, but can you a bit explain, or the challenge which go with that, or if you have some examples? Yeah, please.
So maybe I can briefly discuss at a very high level the governance of Instruct, Eric. So our highest level governance body is made of the member states and international organizations. Each of them have 2 representatives on what we call Instruct Council. And we meet at least twice a year with those representatives. And they are the ones that make the decisions. The other governance bodies technically aren't decision-making in the same way as the council. So that makes sure that we've got the buy-in from the member states, and they are the ones who, for example, approve our annual budget and our 5-year plan, which is the periodicity on which we do our planning. And then beneath that, we have our executive committee, and that's made up of representatives of all of our centres, read also nodes. And so that makes sure that we've got buy-in from each part of the federated research infrastructure, and that's really important, and that's also reflected in the subcommittees that report to our executive committee. Again, we've got representatives from all of our centres who are expert in the particular area that that subcommittee works in, for example, transnational access. So through that way, we get our community and the federation feeding into the governance.
So talking about the governance models for the federated services, EduRoam and EduGain. So both have global governance committees, and those are necessary because both services are beyond Europe, right? So we cannot run global services just out of Europe. So the global governance committees for EduRoam and EduGain both have representatives from all continents. And that's essential because you need to have the sense of purpose, you need to have the sense of ownership. It's very, because in the end we're human, right? You don't get humans going unless they have purpose and ownership. They need to feel what they're doing makes sense, and then you can do a lot together, right, as a group of humans. So for both EduRoam and EduGain, we have these global committees. In the end, they both end up in the GEANT board of directors. That's the highest instance. And that's actually increasingly an interesting challenge as we see how geopolitics change. For example, when we had the issue of implementing sanctions after the Russian invasion to Ukraine, there was a heavy debate. How do we respond with EduRoam and EduGain, particularly in Russia? And of course, the global community is split, right? Not everybody sees the Russian aggression as that, but many countries say, we're fine with this. So once you come to global governance, you also come to geopolitics very quickly, and once you become outside of Europe, this can be very, very difficult. So I do hope that the EOSC one day has these problems, because then you really know that you've made it.
Key performance indicator of having a lot of problems. So I'm joking, yeah. Okay. So somebody want to comment?
I don't know, I got the microphone, so let me add. It's true that you need to build consensus, absolutely, and bottom-up is one way. There are topics, however, in which probably forcing a little bit from the top is useful. The EOSC might be an example. I don't know that really bottom-up, people said, okay, we want an EOSC. People, I mean the researchers. But if you make the case that it's useful, then that's when it's brought up. And we had an example, well, a couple of examples exactly in open data. I can't say that 20 years ago our community said, okay, we want to open my data that used to be mine. I want them to be open to everybody. I don't remember really people queuing to tell us this. But when our governing bodies said, okay, this is what you're going to do, it took probably 3, 4, 5 years to show we persevered. It took a few years, but when it started to pay off, that's when you also gain the support from your members. So it's a bit of a mixture, I think, of bottom-up, and at times you need to have a vision that maybe doesn't necessarily come from the bottom. So you need to lead the way to where you think the way is heading to. Not on everything, because nobody will follow after a while, but when it matters, I think it's like that.
Okay. I would continue, otherwise if there is already first questions from the floor. In Slido, I haven't seen anything, right? Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm proud I can. Okay, and I have, yes, I mean, so what is, if focusing now on EOSC, on the docking station of the EOSC Inuit, and Is there anything from your perspective at the moment where you stand, right? I mean, it's different for everybody, but is there something you think there is a missing ingredient or something you could make a recommendation, or what you would need more to mobilize your community? Or it's not obvious. Yeah, please, Natalia.
So one thing that's coming from our community is we're dealing with a variety of different techniques, and some of the techniques are producing data sets that are colossal in scale. And these are the kinds of things that we need to make real decisions on how much we can preserve. So I enjoyed the plenary talk earlier where we were talking about trying to recycle as much data as possible. But in some fields, the size of the data means that that is very hard at the moment, and we're working in a federated manner as well. Some of our centres have the capacity to store some of this data for some period of time. How long can we store it? What types of data can we maintain? We need to think about things like compression, and whether we can still make meaningful conclusions out of compressed data sets, because then we would be able to store more of these things. And this is a challenge that our community is coming to terms with. There's an awful lot of data usage that we don't know what it will be in the future. So at the moment, one example is cryo-electron tomography. We used to deal in single particle analysis where you'd see one protein multiple times in a field of view. Now we're looking at cellular sections. And obviously, you might be interested in this one protein within the cellular section in its context, but there's a whole lot more information in that we don't know about. So if we don't know the applications, then we don't know how to best compress, if we have to get into the world of compressing, to make use of the data. So one thing that our community would definitely like from EOSC, but again, it's a money issue and a resource issue, is more centralized storage capacity for long-term data preservation. And this is a hard challenge to solve, and everybody wants somebody else to pay for it. And I don't have the answers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, totally agreeing to that point. And on top of this, even resource to compute on, because that's of course very essential for making advances with the data too. And from my own perspective at EMBO, we're realizing that one challenge for us is really we're dealing with different data types. We're typically classifying structural, macromolecular structures, imaging, and genomic data, and we are within our organization building tools and frameworks to deal with these data and enable interoperable data management across sites. And establishing that, we're realizing yet another challenge is to convince our researchers to deposit their data accordingly, and that requires a new layer of personnel, data stewards that work with scientists and offer a hand in putting the data into the resources. And so there are many components of this, but this is all needed if we want to make data reusable, openly reusable. Also, if we want to use AI more widely on this continent, we need to make sure that the data are actually suitably deposited and available for AI tools, which are extremely data hungry and will not tolerate when researchers don't share. So there's multiple challenges, but I do see, or I do have high hopes that we are going to make progress on those, actually.
The GEAN community, we actually always have quite an eager process of preparation towards the EOSC Symposium. Last year we had a position paper on the EOSC notes, which I hope we influenced a little bit the note discussion. And this year again, the community came together and led by the NRENs and Helen Clare, who sits here, wrote a position paper on what do we as a GEAN association, so GEAN and the NREN membership, what do we see as the next necessary steps for our relationship with EOSC, and how do we see GEAN and EOSC and the NRENs positioning themselves? And I think what comes out of there very clearly is that there's an increasing awakening, I think, in the NREN community, that NRENs play a role, particularly when it comes to national nodes. I don't want to say every NREN in Europe, but a few, many, and certainly those that are also mandated organizations in EOSC, so there's quite a nice overlap there. The other element that we see very much is, the way GEAN is positioned really in the space between EOSC, EuroHPC, and AI in that respect as well. but also into EOSC and the European, the data spaces, the rest of the data spaces. You know, the secure connectivity element, the access element is needed by all of those. So we very much see that. What we hope very much is that when we talk about the candidate nodes and when we talk about the interaction between the EOSC EU node and the candidates nodes, that the focus will effectively be on building the federation, building the interoperability, because I think this is when we really gain the traction, when we suddenly see, look, you know, this is not only working here, it's working there, and it's actually interoperable, and it's a seamless researcher experience. So having that research-centric view on how do we create this environment, as you said earlier, you know, to take the complexities out. When a researcher opens their laptop and connects to EduRoam, they don't think, you know, oh God, now I'm authenticated in my home institution. Oh, I wonder how that works. No, they don't. It's just, it opens up, you use it, it works, it's a wonder, you're surprised. Sometimes you're really surprised, you tweet about it. But that's how it needs to be. That's how it needs to be. And I think this is now the focus, you know, to make the magic happen. And I think one of the hopes is, yes, let's talk federation, let's talk interoperability, and let's build on existing experiences. Thank you.
Additional from the library's point of view, I think, and this is also aligned with all the library colleagues here in the room and at the symposium. There's already a lot of work going on regarding to data stewardship, data support centers, data open science service or support centers. And what I really hope and what I would like to work on in collaboration with EOSC from a LIBER point of view is how can we connect those both worlds? So not only work into the current infrastructures and the support systems that are in those infrastructures organized, but also connect it with what's already there outside of the ERICs, and then make the most of everything that's already out there. So that's something I really wish that would be the next step.
Okay. Thank you. There is, I think, one question from the Slido. Yeah, it's a quite straightforward question. I think each of you can answer it about, do your communities want to become a thematic node? But I think if your answer would be good already to answer why you think it would good or not, or yeah, you have to position yourself already or not.
Let me start first, because we had this discussion in LIBER. Would we like to become a node? The answer so far was no, because we're more than network. We're not able to speak for the 400 libraries that we have in our network. So to make sure that the responsibility, but also the resources that are in the universities and in the university libraries, that's where the gold is. For us as LIBER, that's very difficult to use it on a larger scale, but we did think of it. It was one of the questions that came to mind. So at this moment, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so speaking for a community is a bit overwhelming, so this is probably my take on it more than the general one. And the first thing is, what is a community? Is it astronomy? Is it physics? What is it? So this is the first question that I think makes it hard to give an answer to that. We need to see. Certainly, EOSC is an overwhelming experience. So one thing is to try to make clarity, and you know, EOSC is trying. I think we're all contributing in trying to do that, but I think we need to understand that from an individual research point of view, EOSC is still a very fuzzy concept. So working into shaping that, starting from what is a node, which I think is a theme that may have already occurred a couple of times today. So what is a node? What does it expect of a node? What am I doing when I subscribe to being a node or contributing to a node? So these are all things that will make it clearer how to get to the answer, but I don't know that there is an answer to the very straight question. I don't know that I would have an answer today.
Thank you.
Well, we completed the survey, the questionnaire, and the answer was yes. I think particularly the AAI infrastructure is an enabler for any EOSC node. So we definitely are enablers of nodes. I imagine that there will be several European NRENs that look at the moment at, establishing the national node or supporting towards the establishment of a national node. So I think this is always a little bit, the intersection between, an e-infrastructure that is very underlying, and then, GEANT on a European level is, of course, so supporting the establishment of the EOSC EU node. So will we be able to call this really a node? I don't know. But the mandate of GEANT and NRENs is to support science in Europe. And in that element, in that respect, we will be doing what we need to do in order to make sure, as Jörg Surefetter said earlier, and I think it was Peter Szegedi this morning, to make the researchers happy. So that's what we need to do. And will that be enabling EOSC nodes, or will that be creating EOSC nodes? I think that still remains to be seen. And in our membership in the 43 countries that are working with GEANT, the answer will be different in every of the countries, for sure, because that's, different. And then what that means for GEANT will come out of the community discussion that we will have.
Okay, thank you.
So likewise, Instruct answered the questionnaire in the summer, and we also said yes, but obviously this comes with the disclaimer that there's a lot still to be learnt, and our visions on what a node are, our internal vision on what a structural biology node could be. We do not yet know if that aligns with the wider community's needs, and there's a lot of alignment that's needed within sub-communities as well. So we're part of the life science cluster of research infrastructures, in the same way Bonnie's part of the social sciences and humanities cluster of research infrastructures. And I think discussions need to be had at that level as well to see how various thematic nodes could fit together. Also with EMBL, because a lot of the resources in structural biology, some of them are EMBL resources, not all of them. So if we wanted a structural biology thematic node, we would need to have discussions on that level to see where the different owners of resources that can onboard onto a common node. There are also different readiness levels of resources, and within Instruct we don't promise that everything is completely ready yet. We have some services that are very ready and some services that are in their initial conceptual stages, which are very exciting potentially down the line, but what it means to be a node will change over time, and we're still learning, but we're very happy to be on board for the ride, I think.
Thank you. Yeah. So same here. We also put in an application for a node, and we're currently exploring, but we're certainly interested to explore. And while we're exploring, it's not clear whether EMBL would do it alone or potentially in collaboration with Alex here. There could be other opportunities. But I'd like to stress that I believe it's very important to have life science, namely biology representation as an EOS node from the start, because of domain-specific aspects of it, and also because of the importance of biological data in European science. And well, the Nobel Prize was mentioned, which AlphaFold got the Nobel Prize, obviously, in chemistry, or half of the Nobel Prize was given to for the invention of AlphaFold, which has really changed the scientific field and will have many implications for drug discovery and so on. So it's clear that the domain-specific aspect of biological data is very important. And EMBL was originally founded to promote the life sciences and engage communities in Europe in life science. So we feel we would have a good role to play to group the community. And we strongly believe that a biology or life science node needs to be interlinked within the fields and regard the individual strengths of parts in Europe. And yeah, so that we feel we're currently exploring, but we feel we might be able to play a role there.
Is there already some questions from the audience? Yes, there is a young lady.
Thank you for the very nice discussion. Asta Mato, Eurobioimaging. I actually want to come back to the point that both Natalie and Jan mentioned, that to a certain degree you would need to have conversations internally in subgroups in different combinations and permutations of the people involved. At least, I guess in your case, you're majorly talking about data that is already openly available. So indeed, you are kind of trying to, it seems like there is an effort to try and, let's say, coordinate and make things available, although they technically are already openly available. So what is your expectations and what do you think is the added value to it, like to be had from doing this exercise that can actually benefit your resources a bit more in terms of usage or whatever it is, because in a way you are trying to add more bureaucracy. I guess somebody had already mentioned that. We should have less of that. I think Natalie mentioned it. So we should have less of it, but we are going towards more of it. So what is happening here?
Maybe I can respond directly to that question. So we separately have a vision which is kind of going in parallel to EOSC, which is that Instruct has oversight over a research project from kind of cradle to grave. We can go from the project inception, we collect information in an online access management system, and connecting that to the data will provide useful enrichment on additional metadata in a way to that project. We also are working towards connecting instrumentation directly to the data to increase automation in the process of getting that experimental data into those databases that, as you mentioned, are already openly available, and increasing the visibility of that. The other thing is that the data that our community produces, our community are not the main consumers of those data. And this is a really interesting picture in EOS. So if we can make things more visible to broader scientific communities, we're basic scientists. The applications come down the line. And I think I asked a question in one of the panels yesterday about impact, because it's very difficult as a basic science infrastructure to have your eye over everything that's happening, at all the potential applications, because you can look at a very specific one and then measure against that. But the possibilities are effectively endless, and we think that the added value is we can enrich these data sets, increase their utility, and add new data sets. And also, it's not just data sets that a node would provide. There are also software services and things along those lines. So we've got a whole portfolio of different services we put together, just as our first runoff of the things that people in our infrastructure thought would be useful in structural biology, and that is by no means an exhaustive list.
Another question from the floor? Okay. If not, I have another question. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, sorry. Miguel Rey from TU Graz and EOS Focus Project. I would like to ask you about what are your the risks you perceive for your institutions or networks, or your fears if you join the federation. Like, it could be like we get too much demand for data or resources. It could be like it doesn't work, or what would it be?
You mean now risk or fears to not become a node directly, or what do you mean?
No, regardless, actually. They could offer the services through another node. It didn't be them, so.
Who would like to take this question? Yeah, okay.
Apologies, I don't want to dominate the conversation, but one of the risks that we see is sustainability and resources that are to be allocated to this process, because at the moment, I think everybody's saying, we don't know exactly what the resources required will be, and there's no promise of funding at this stage, and people need to contribute in kind. So obviously, this is quite a commitment that we need to make with no necessary guarantee of success or sustainability. Another big worry that our organization has is vendor lock-in. So we need to make sure that whatever we put resource into is something that itself is interoperable and movable. So say whatever comes post-procurement of the EU node, we haven't put a lot of effort into something which then we become reliant on, that itself is not sustainable. And that is a real important consideration when we're deciding how deep to go into these things.
Okay, just a very brief addition to this. So one of the fears that we discussed would be that after initial nodes are live, that certain parts of the community are not cannot be that easily considered anymore because of early decisions. That would not be a vendor login, that would be some other sort of EOSC login that could happen and could result in a situation where it would be more difficult for specific strengths and expertises in Europe to also be reflected, the later movers. And so I understand that it's going to be very complex, but that's indeed one of the challenges we discussed.
Yeah, I think my concern at this point in time is the patience of the top-down models. To what extent is there political patience for federations to grow? EduRoam is over 20 years old, and it's not something that was successful overnight. It started, as I said, with champions. It was 3 NRENs that started it around the Dutch NREN. And then it grew, and today it's, I think, over 100 countries having EduRoam, and it is still growing because we still have space to grow. But once it's growing, and once, you reach a certain scale, of course the growth is quicker, but in the beginning, your champions are doing an enormous amount of legwork, right? And you need to believe into it, really. And then you also need to deal with the fact that you are branding something under the name EduRoam. You have a code of conduct, you have a specific technology, but there will always be people that are not doing it right. There will always be university sites that are just not getting the hang of it. And then, students from those universities, researchers will be disappointed, and you get that immediately. Somebody said this morning, infrastructure is only as good as you don't see it. If you see infrastructure, something has gone wrong. And that I think is a little bit the danger. So having the brand means that you really need to, as a collective, deliver according to certain standards and hold yourself responsible against each other. And that, again, works better from my perspective in a bottom-up model, when the peers look each other in the eye and say, you're letting all of us down. But then the political patience is something that's incredibly important. We're seeing that EOSC is now a partnership. The EOS partnership comes to an end in 2027. We still don't know where this will go. And we know that the next big thing is out there, right? The Commission has the, or all political makers, I don't want to put it to the Commission, they have these things, they are riding the wave, and we all remember IPv6, we're remembering, the future networks. All these sort of things, we need to make sure that we continue the momentum, but the momentum sustained is community momentum, is the bottom up. And this is again why I find it is so important that the top-down model leaves space for the bottom-up, because if you want momentum, you need the people on the ground running with it. So I think, in order to have EOSC long-term running, you cannot run it from the top. You need to allow the community to actually be in the driver's seat long-term.
Okay, thank you. There are some questions on the floor, but my feeling is it's more catered towards EOSC EU node, and some would a bit now be, we would need to discuss it too long. So before I give you the final question, I would like personally make a comment because we will not discuss it. So you said that what is the community, right? At the moment you know quite well your community. If you are at the S3 hearing, you should know your community, but the point I want to make, the possibility in EOS to work cross-disciplinary, right? To even, having access to data, to services and the possibility to create new research questions of which I've never thought about. I think that's really a perspective, right? And there's also pro and cons, because of course things are getting diluted. And I can tell you even from CESTA as a social science data archive, we onboard also now increasingly public health data or even life science data because we work in EU project. So point is that we might see something like this blurring boundaries in the future, and that's why I think also it's also something to consider if you launch yourself in the adventure to, that the perspective that you might create something new. So that's a bit my 5 cents take on that, and with that, we are 3 o'clock, but perhaps just rapidly telling us what do you think, or what's the added value of being in this discussion debate?
Yeah, for us, for EMBL, clearly the added value is we are already providing data to the community and resource to the community, but this is an excellent chance for further engagement in Europe and further linking up with our various partners and organizations, and also to make research even more interdisciplinary between domains. So there's many opportunities here beyond what EMBL already does, but I want to emphasize again, we were originally made to engage the community, and this will be an opportunity to further amplify that.
So I think one of the points here would be the same as the argument for infrastructure in general, is to democratize science. It's not just those who have the means to get hold of the data through their own internal networks, to make it open to everybody, so anybody who's got a good idea can exploit the data. And that isn't just humans anymore, that's machines.
Well, I think as Europe, we really need to stay competitive, and if we want to stay competitive, we are not too many. We really need to collaborate. So I think EOSC in that respect is a really good complementary activity to what we in JEAN have been doing for a long time, cross-border, cross-connectivity, now interdomain and cross-domain exchange of data. It is absolutely vital. It's necessary for Europe to get ahead of that because the world out there is not waiting for us.
Yeah, so I think that the potential here is that there is something potentially really great brewing here. Really, really great. And I think that the added value is trying to help in steering it towards something that is actually great.
And in addition, the only way to do it, and that's why I'm happy to be in this discussion and that there's so much discussion going on, is to actually connect with each other and keep talking and keep finding each other in the discussions.
Thank you very much. Big applause for this great panel. Thank you very much.